Hello again, Cons here. With Alatreon coming out fairly soon, I thought I would go over the state of the meta for some of my preferred weapons. I'll be starting with Greatsword because it's fairly simple but also does have a few variations. Also please see the disclaimers on screen now. The first set I thought I'd go through is the typical Master's Touch set. The only real difference this has had over time is the use of Brachydios to get Agitator 7, but otherwise it's all very much just stayed the same as normal, standard crit meta with focus. Peak performance is a little bit iffy because you're going to be doing a lot of shoulder bashing into attacking, at which point you want to have peak performance active and it forces you to heal a lot more. So you can not bother with peak performance and swap out the jewel on your light break for coalescence. But aside from that, it's a fairly standard 30 base affinity with this. I'll show you the augments. I go attack and health, you go take whatever you like. But yeah, 30 affinity without Agitator 7 active, and then when you get to 7 you get the plus 20, and then the 50 from weakness exploit takes you to 100. Very standard stuff. This next set is a slightly riskier one. As you can see, no health augment on my Safi'Jiiva Greatsword, which I'm using. By the way, because we're not using Master's Touch on this set, is the reason I'm using Safi. Higher row, don't need to worry about maintaining purple, and generally this is a better Greatsword, although it's a bit of a side grade. But anyway, you can see this set swaps out the Master's Touch for Safi'Jiiva set bonus, which lets you use Resentment instead of peak performance. Not only is that slightly more raw, but it's also slightly more consistent in my experience. And because you have Safi'Jiiva for some of the affinity, you can put a few more points away from things like expert into attack boost. As you can see, I'm also using coalescence on this set. Generally, coalescence is a very high value skill if you find yourself using it. However, I don't put it on most of my sets because I don't find myself taking advantage of it frequently, but you should obviously make your own decisions, and it is generally considered meta. Also, regarding focus, it's up to your own personal preference how much focus you want to run. I always run 3 levels of focus though. The next few sets I want to talk about involve the pretty amazing Frostcraft Greatsword, probably my preferred way to play the weapon, to be honest. You can see my Safi'Jiiva Greatsword has Volcana Divinity awoken into it. With these sets, with the Rhyme Guard, you can swap out for alpha pieces for some of these without losing many skills and in order to gain coalescence fairly easily. So keep that in mind. But yeah, pretty standard skills. You can see 30 affinity, Agitator would get you to 50, and then weakness exploit would take you to 100. As is standard with Frostcraft, I would recommend running Elemental Greatsword. You can see I have ice on mine because I'm using this set for Rajang, but you should go with whatever you like. I don't waste any skill points trying to build up elemental damage, but it's just nice to have it on the set. I don't specifically know the maths on whether or not blast out damages it. I don't think it does, but it would probably depend on the matchup. Yeah, as you can see, Volcana Divinity 2-4 and Agitator Awoken. Now, if you're like me, when you play Frostcraft Greatsword, you probably prefer an entirely draw-based playstyle. I don't really like throwing TCSs out, I just prefer using sort of an old world style of Greatsword play. And for people like that, even though this isn't meta, this is the set that I've been using. You can see it runs 2 points of critical draw, and then alongside the affinity with the 20 from Agitator and the 60 from 2 levels of crit draw, that gets you to 100. And then it's just pretty standard DPS skills on top of all of that. You can see I run peak performance and focus. You don't really need to worry about shoulder bashing when you are not using TCSs. And so peak performance is a lot more consistent to run. And so you can see I have my the augments on my Greatsword are pretty standard. And this is the same Greatsword as before because again I've been using it for Rajang. But yeah, so this is a entirely draw based Greatsword playstyle. Now the next few sets are completely off meta, so the meta stuff has all been completely covered, but this is probably my favourite Frostcraft Greatsword. As you can see, I'm just using the standard Greatsword, but obviously if you're fighting Teostra, you might want to use water, I don't know. You don't have to use ice, it's just mine, because I'm using them to fight Rajang mostly. Yeah, instead of running 2 pieces of Raging Brachydios, I'm running 2 pieces of Furious Jang, which unlocks maximum might. For anybody who's not aware, that basically gives you 40 affinity, and it works like it did back in Base World, where there's no delay. The moment you're at max stamina, you get the affinity. Now the way that this set works is it has 60 affinity at base and 2 points of critical draw, which then take you up to 120, so 100 affinity for your draw attacks. Now once you've done a level 3 draw, you should have reached maximum stamina, at which point the 40 affinity from maximum might kicks in, and then you reach 100 for the rest of your attacks. And so it's kind of like a weird mixed set where the crit draw gives you your draw attacks and the maximum might then gives you your TCSs. Yeah, a really interesting playstyle. I used this for my Furious Jang speedruns. It was a blast to play. And this final set here is the comfy set that I use for sort of optimal defense. You can see I used the Brachydios Greatsword even though it's not using Master's Touch. You can swap this for Safi, but you lose an extra 3 slot. which usually just means either running one less point of focus or one less point of peak performance. So if you'd prefer to use Safi for the sort of longer white sharpness and for the greater roar, then go for it. I don't know, I prefer using light break with this. Again, it's off meta, so it doesn't really matter. But you can see I'm running 2 piece of Gold Rathian and 2 piece of Braki for Agitator Secret and Divine Blessing Secret. Here are the skills. You can see I'm at affinity of 30, so 20 from Agitator, 50 from Weakness Exploit. It's the same old story. I have 3 points of health boost, 3 points of recovery up, and 5 points of divine blessing on the set as my defensive skills. And because the idea is that you're going to be spending so much time at maximum health, I'm obviously running 3 points of peak performance, but you can possibly swap those out for something else if you'd prefer. With the 3 points of recovery up, even your minor greatsword swings will recover large chunks of your health very quickly, and so it's unlikely you're going to get killed by anything if you're tanking through it, especially the Rocksteady Mantle. When you account for the fact that you're going to have the increased Divine Blessing as well, which basically makes you an invulnerable tank, yeah, it's very difficult to die with this set, but you can see it still maintains a huge amount of the DPS that it needs. It's got full crit boost, it's got peak performance, agitator at 7 and attack boost at 4. So it's still got most of the DPS skills that you need and uses a really powerful greatsword. So yeah, it's a great mixture of defensive skills that make you nearly invulnerable, but also really great offense so you can still contribute to your team. And this last set here is very much just a joke. It is meant to harken back to the days of 4U relic greatswords. You can see I've given it sleep even though you apply so little status per attack. It's a sleep greatsword with purple sharpness, with punishing draw, the 2-piece barrier set bonus. I guess a lot of people won't even know what this is because nobody uses it. But yeah, your draw attacks can do stun damage. And so it is a completely draw based, you know, crit draw is all of your affinity. It's just draw level 3 charges using Frostcraft to do as much damage as you can and to get some KOs. It is very much a joke set, but it's kind of fun, and it does bring me back to the old days of 4U relic grinding. I have Slugger on the set. A single point is all you really need, to be honest with you, because it gives you 20%, whereas each additional level gives you another 10%. Yeah, that first level of Slugger actually does make a pretty significant difference in my opinion. It's often the difference between no KOs or 1 KO in a hunt, especially in multiplayer. But yeah, don't think too much about this set. It's mostly just a joke, but it is quite fun if you find yourself playing a lot of draw-based greatsword. Then throwing punishing draw on there as a bit of a joke and maybe going into multiplayer with sleep, it's it can be a bit of a laugh. But yeah, that's all I really have for you. A summary of all of the meta greatsword sets and some of the non-meta ones that I thought were fun, and also just some joke and defensive builds too. Hopefully this helped you, and hopefully you can sort of gear up in preparation for Alatreon, especially if you're a greatsword main, but even if not, yeah, I hope you found this very helpful. Please remember the disclaimers. Hopefully I've put them back on screen, but yeah, don't complain about the lack of defensive skills of some of the sets and stuff like that. Yeah, I've addressed that in the disclaimers, but yeah, that's all I really had to say, and so I hope this helped, and I hope you have a lovely day. Take it easy. Bye bye.